My ex-wife and her boyfriend laughed at me as our divorce was finalized. Then the judge revealed a final surprise that left them in tears. I, 32M, want to share one of the wildest experiences of my life, my divorce. Let me just say, it was more drama than I ever bargained for. I met my ex-wife about 7 years ago. We dated for around 2 years before finally tying the knot. At the time, I was convinced we had something amazing, and I was all in. I've been working in real estate sales for a while, nothing fancy, but decent enough to cover my bills and let me have a few treats now and then. Meanwhile, she worked part-time at a local boutique before we got married, but after the wedding, she pretty much decided to take a long break and find herself. I tried to be supportive because I assumed she'd eventually figure out what she really wanted to do with her life. At first, I didn't see any huge red flags. We moved into a small house that I bought with my own money before the wedding. My father co-signed the loan just to help me get a better interest rate, but all the monthly payments came straight out of my pocket. My father and mother both liked my ex-wife early on. She'd hang out with my mother, chat about clothes or local gossip, and she'd discuss sports with my father during the big games. She seemed outgoing and friendly. My sister, who's a couple years younger than me, was a bit more cautious. She told me once that my ex-wife seemed too focused on what she could get out of the relationship, but I shrugged it off because I loved her and thought we'd be a solid team. Months passed, and things started to shift. She began going out late at night, claiming she needed space, or was with some friends I'd never even heard of. She'd come back in the early morning hours and act like I was the one being dramatic for asking simple questions. I tried to give her room, thinking maybe she was stressed from not working and feeling stuck at home. But my gut kept telling me something else was going on. My sister also noticed the change in her attitude. She said that whenever my ex-wife visited, she seemed distant, like her mind was somewhere else. One night, my ex-wife came home at 2 a.m. I was waiting up in the living room, worried sick. The second she walked in, she looked surprised that I was awake. I asked her where she'd been, and she got all defensive, yelling about how I was controlling and paranoid. She stormed into our bedroom, slammed the door, and left me sitting alone, feeling confused as hell. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She didn't apologize or explain. She just moved on as if I was supposed to forget about it. Eventually, the suspicion got to me. One day, I saw her phone lying on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and I glanced at it. I know some people say never snoop on your partner's phone, but given how things were, I couldn't help it. And there it was, messages that made it very clear she was talking to some other guy in a way that went way beyond friendship. Let's just say the texts were graphic enough to kill off any lingering doubt I had. My heart sank. When I confronted her, she blew up, flipping the script to make it seem like I was the problem for invading her privacy. But deep down, I knew our relationship was basically done. We had an insane fight that night. She accused me of never supporting her dreams, which was ridiculous because she never even told me what her dreams actually were. She said she felt smothered, even though I basically let her do whatever she wanted. I told her she was betraying me, and she didn't bother denying it. She left the house in a fury. I remember sitting at the dining table, staring at the walls, thinking how quickly everything had gone from bliss to chaos. The next few weeks were tense. She would stay out more often, sometimes not returning until the morning. We barely spoke. My father noticed I was in a foul mood and invited me over for dinner without her. That night, my mother, father, and sister all rallied around me, saying I deserved better and that I shouldn't let her walk all over me. They told me I might need to prepare for the possibility that our marriage was beyond repair. It hurt, but I knew they were right. A short time later, I discovered she'd actually moved in with this guy she'd been texting. I came home early one afternoon, hoping we could try to have a civil discussion, only to find her packing up some clothes while on the phone with someone, telling them to make space for her in a closet. I could feel my blood boiling, but oddly enough, I also felt a wave of relief, like at least I knew the truth now. I told her to take whatever she wanted and just go. She shot me this look that was a mix of pity and annoyance, and then she left. After that, the official divorce process started. It was a complete nightmare. She quickly hired a lawyer, so I hired one too. We had to follow the usual steps in my state. There was a waiting period plus mediation sessions to see if we could settle. But there was no way I would settle for the kind of bullshit she was demanding. She wanted half of everything. Half of my house, half of my savings, even half of my car's value. She was basically trying to bleed me dry. And her new boyfriend was right there with her at mediation, smirking as if they were about to cash a winning lottery ticket. My father and mother were furious, but they reminded me not to do anything rash. My sister was the one who was like, take the gloves off and burn them in court. I felt a mix of both approaches. Part of me wanted revenge, and part of me wanted to handle it with calm logic. My lawyer advised me to keep my emotions in check and just stick to the facts. So that's what I did. I gathered every receipt, every bank statement, every document showing I'd bought the house before the marriage. I made sure I had proof that she never contributed a dime to the mortgage or bills. She'd basically coasted on my income. The good news was, under U.S. law, assets you acquire before marriage can stay yours if you don't commingle them. And I had made sure to keep everything separate. My lawyer said we had a strong case. Still, every time we went to mediation, it was torture. She'd act all sweet and vulnerable in front of the mediator, claiming she had no idea what to do now and how she'd given up her career to be with me. Funny how she forgot she quit on her own and that she was basically living with another guy. Her boyfriend was even cockier, sometimes whispering remarks about how I'd soon be paying for their dream home. The arrogance was insane. Eventually, we reached the final stretch, a day in court where the judge would make the final decisions. Right before that, I got a message from her boyfriend on social media, taunting me that I'd be left with scraps. He even said something like, I can't believe you're such a sucker, man. Thanks for setting us up. I screenshotted that shit and gave it to my lawyer. But I didn't engage him. I just blocked him and moved on. I knew that losing my cool could hurt me in court, so I tried to stay chill. The night before the final hearing, I was a complete wreck. Couldn't sleep, pacing around my living room, thinking about all the possible outcomes. I had nightmares of losing my house and my savings, basically everything I worked for. My father offered to drive me to the courthouse the next morning, and I took him up on it because it felt good to have support. We got there, and I saw my ex-wife and her boyfriend in the hallway, giggling like they were about to watch a comedy show. My lawyer met me, gave me a firm handshake, and we walked in together. The judge was no nonsense, which I found comforting. My lawyer laid out our evidence, the timeline of my house purchase, the bank statements proving I funded everything before and during the marriage, and the messages where she admitted she didn't chip in. Her lawyer tried to spin this sob story of how she sacrificed her ambitions to focus on our home life, but it didn't really line up with reality. Then my lawyer dropped the text that showed she was already with a boyfriend before moving out. The judge asked my ex-wife some direct questions about when she started seeing this guy and whether she told me about wanting a divorce first. She stumbled over her answers. It was pretty clear she'd been lying about the whole timeline. I saw a noticeable change in the judge's face at that point. He flipped through some papers, took a moment, and then asked if I had anything else. My lawyer reiterated that, while I understood some minimal spousal support might be ordered because she was unemployed, it shouldn't be anywhere near half of my assets, especially given the short marriage and her lack of financial contribution. The judge nodded and said he needed a quick recess to finalize his decision. We left the courtroom. My ex-wife and her boyfriend stood off to one side, whispering. I overheard him saying something like, "Don't worry, babe, we got this." That made me grit my teeth, but I held it together. After what felt like an hour but was probably just 15 minutes, we got called back in. My heart was pounding as the judge started talking. He went over the facts. Our marriage was short. I purchased the house before the wedding, and there was clear evidence she contributed little financially or domestically. Then he revealed his ruling. She would not get the 50% or more that she demanded. Instead, she'd receive a minimal settlement to help her get on her feet, plus a short-term spousal support that would end quickly, especially given that she was already cohabiting with her boyfriend. The judge basically said she had another form of financial support, so she wasn't entirely helpless. The look on their faces was priceless. My ex-wife's jaw practically hit the floor, and her boyfriend suddenly lost that smug grin. She tried to protest, and her lawyer asked if the judge would reconsider, but the judge was like, "No, this is final." My lawyer gave me this tiny smile, and I felt relief flood my entire body. I could finally breathe. For once, justice went my way. When the session ended, we all stood up. My ex-wife darted over to me, muttering about how I wouldn't get away with this. I just told her the judge made the decision based on the evidence, and she needed to accept it. Her boyfriend looked like he wanted to start a fight, but my father stepped up. The boyfriend called me a loser under his breath, and I just said, "You're the one who lost today. Deal with it." He turned red and stormed off with her. Outside the courtroom, my father gave me a hug. My mother and sister were at home, waiting for the news. My lawyer shook my hand and said this was one of those cases where everything lines up in favor of the person who was actually honest. We left the courthouse, and my father joked about grabbing a drink. You bet I took him up on it. On the ride back, I called my mother and sister, and they were thrilled. My sister was screaming about how awesome it felt to see those two get put in their place. I had so much adrenaline pumping through me, like I just won a championship game or something. A few days later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that my ex-wife was livid and convinced the judge was biased. Her boyfriend was apparently whining about how unfair the system was. The same system he thought was going to hand them my money on a silver platter. They had even been telling people they planned on investing a huge amount once the divorce was finalized. Talk about counting your chickens before they hatch. Now they were stuck with pretty much nothing. I won't lie, it felt good to see them both face the consequences of their entitlement. They thought they'd toyed with me and that the court would just hand over everything I'd worked for. But nope, the law actually sided with the facts. People sometimes assume the ex-wife automatically gets a big payday in a divorce, but it doesn't always work that way, especially when she's the one who walked out and contributed next to nothing. In the aftermath, I made it a point to rebuild my life. I hung out with friends more, picked up guitar lessons, something I've been putting off for ages, and spent more time at the gym. My father and mother started inviting me over more frequently for dinner, which was comforting. My sister kept saying I should go on a vacation to clear my head. Maybe I will someday. For now, I'm just happy to be out of that toxic situation. Looking back, I wish I had seen the red flags sooner. But I guess sometimes you have to learn the hard way. I gave my ex-wife everything I could, but she wanted more. She wanted to control the whole narrative, take my assets, and rub her new relationship in my face. It was like I was dealing with a completely different person from the one I married. But after seeing her meltdown in court and the tears she fought back when the judge announced her bare minimum settlement, I realized I was finally free. The actual settlement I ended up paying was pretty small compared to what she had demanded. The judge gave it an expiration date, given how short the marriage was and because she was living with a boyfriend. She got a few months of support, basically the legal system's version of here's something so you can move on. As far as I'm concerned, it was a price I'd pay any day to get rid of that nightmare. I've heard through the grapevine that she and her boyfriend are having money problems now. They probably thought they'd be popping champagne with my hard-earned cash, but that door slammed shut in their faces. Let's just say I don't lose any sleep over it. They made their bed, and now they can lie in it. So yeah, that's how my divorce went from a complete shit show to one of the most satisfying moments of my life. My ex-wife and her boyfriend actually laughed at me in front of the judge, fully convinced they were about to score a windfall. But the judge took one look at the facts and made a final call that left them both speechless. Moral of the story, keep good records, stand up for yourself, and don't let entitled people run you over. Sometimes, life gives you the sweet payoff you deserve. And honestly, watching their faces when they realized they were only getting the bare minimum, that alone was worth everything I went through. All in all, I'm doing all right now. I've got my house, my savings, and a clean slate. Sure, I have a few scars from the experience, but I'd rather have those scars than be trapped in that train wreck of a marriage for another second. My father still teases me that I dodged a bullet, and my mother says she's never been prouder that I stood my ground. My sister cracks jokes about me writing a book someday. Maybe I will. But for now, I just wanted to share this story here, hoping it might help someone else realize that you don't have to roll over for people who think they can take you for a ride. If you're in a similar position, hang in there. Gather your proof, trust the process, and remember that sometimes the best revenge is just watching your ex and their new partner realize they're not walking away with the jackpot they thought they had in the bag. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm finally off the ride, and life is a hell of a lot better on solid ground.